All right, so we are now live.
All right, welcome everyone. We're excited to be here and talk about this is a very important topic, kind of the center of everything we do at Sentient Academy. And this is a topic that I've personally been interested in for many years and love to talk about this kind of thing and what it means to develop mastery, how you do it, the best practices, the scientific research behind it. And so hopefully this will be, although we're not going to specifically talk about specific paint strokes or certain colors that you're going to use, what we do want to talk about is applying certain principles of mastery or how to develop that in your work. How to, when you have that time to paint or to draw, how do you make the most of it? And how do you leverage that painting practice that you are developing to help you go sequentially from wherever you're at to break through into higher levels of learning, right?
Yeah, because we just barely saw some really old outdated DVD streamed on the internet of you teaching, like, how long was it, like 10-15 years ago?
10 years ago.
10 years ago, right? And then if you look at today, Bryan Taylor today compared to 10 years ago, you've gone a lot further from 10 years ago. So we are really curious about your process, not just the painting strokes process, but a lot of it, like you said, there's scientific research backing a lot of this mastery methodology that you deployed in your own career, right? Because we all know there's no shortcut, right? But there is a way to get there faster, or get more out of the time, because everybody has the same 24 hours. But you have one way to use your 24 hours to get you almost 48 hours worth of practice or improvement, rather than spending 48 hours to get 24 hours of improvement.
Right. And also, if you're not practicing correctly, you can actually and correctly, we'll kind of have to talk about what that means, but you can actually reinforce bad habits if you're practicing kind of in a way that's counterproductive to where you're trying to go in your work. And so we definitely want to talk about things to look out for in order to accelerate that process.
And I've been through that myself. Just a quick example, because I dug this out today. This is a really old painting or oil sketch I did when I was a student. And this is actually a pivotal point of my short-lived art career. Back in school, I never learned how to draw or paint or anything. So I picked up oil painting. I jumped right into oil painting when I was 25, and I couldn't do anything right. And I signed up for portrait painting right away, not knowing anything about drawing or ahead or whatever it is. And long story short, this is the first sketch that actually looked like a model. After my teacher told me my art looked like Walmart, it's generic. And then he told me to, measure everything. I got it down. So I was able to, do this. And I was in the art program for about 2 years, and I dropped out. And after that, I took a long 10-year break. And then 10 years later, this happened. And that is after I met Bryan and started our Sentient Academy. And through all these different master artists and a lot of their teaching. And of course, Bryan kind of taught me a lot of these developing your mastery tips to really help me, gain knowledge from all these artists and use some of this like deliberate practice framework to, improve. And even though I don't paint or draw or practice every day, but I'm constantly training my eyes to see, and I try to paint or draw in my head. So every time, say if I am able to squeeze out, like yesterday, I squeezed out 2 hours to paint something, I can really focus. So let's talk about some of those techniques that will help you to get the most out of your time.
So I get calls or texts or, every once in a while on Instagram, and had one just a week or so ago, talked with a young artist, and they were kind of confused on what to do. And one of the reasons why is, you get on Instagram and you see somebody painting this amazing thing, and that's in a like a real loose painterly style, then somebody else painting in something very tight, and maybe it's in a totally different type of subject. And a lot of this gets people really confused, like what do I do, what do I pick, and how do I navigate this whole space? Well, one of the things that I in this discussion that I talked with him about is really digging and trying to find what it is that this artist really was interested in learning. And as we started to drill down and have this conversation, I was able to uncover what it was that they were truly interested in, and that was painting, well, actually drawing.
Oh.
He liked drawing women, right?
Yeah.
So that was his, like, if he could only do one thing, that's what he would want to do, he said. And so part of it is we have a lot of things that we like to do. And I think sometimes it helps to make that list of, 10, 15 like art styles and things that you want to do. Well, what if you had to eliminate all of them and just pick one?
So you kind of have to really say, what do I truly want to do? I mean, it's great that you love everything, you can do everything, but are you suggesting we should probably find that one, like you, it's the landscape, or not just all landscape, you have something that you just you're passionate about? Is that kind of
right? And that doesn't necessarily mean that I knew that back then what I was going to do today. You kind of work into that, but I think early on, even being exposed in art school, a lot of artists are pursuing a little bit different things, some looser, some tighter. One of the things I realized fairly early on is that I was more interested in painting in a looser style than in a tighter way. And so even though that doesn't mean I don't enjoy really tight academic style.
Because I've seen some of your older work there.
Florence Academy, that doesn't mean I can't learn something from that, but I'm really after a certain thing. And I realized as I was filtering all this out that plein air painting was was the favorite thing, like landscape painting. So I kind of had a goal that I needed to kind of rally my energy around, right? And so I think that's one of the things kind of right off the bat is really kind of deciding what it is that is most important to you if you had to eliminate the 9 other things on your list, is really boiling it down as much. And that doesn't mean you can't go to the other list items later on, maybe, but for like this year, it should be a total commitment to that one goal.
Is there any tips or checklists to help you to kind of pick something, or because we're almost talking about prioritizing in a way?
Yeah.
Is it kind of?
Well, there's a couple of things that you have to balance with that. One is maybe within your own psyche. Maybe say you really like, for instance, I love figurative painting.
Yeah.
But do I have that drive and that interest enough to have models come over to my house every single week and paint them from life? If I know myself, one thing I love is just having my alone time, and I also like being outdoors, right?
Yeah.
So that's my natural state
in there.
Right.
Yeah.
So you want to do things, you have to know yourself, right? As we learned from the Greek philosophers, know thyself. So part of it, when you're picking something, you also want to say, what are my assets? What do I have an abundance of around me that is inspirational, right? And that could be landscape, it could be still life, it could be figures, right?
And that's kind of what you mentioned in the business course about finding your style, right?
Yeah, because that's going to come into play later on, right? Because you're not going to just paint or draw one of those things. You're going to do 10,000.
Yeah,
if you want to make a career out of it.
A lot of the same thing over and over.
And you have to do it for 2 reasons: one, to build a career, but also if you want to achieve mastery, you have to do a lot of that one thing to get it really good.
And I know that because I did not do enough. That's why I'm not there. But
I think
we gotta.
But you do have a focus.
Yeah.
And your focus has always been
the portrait.
The portrait.
And that's what I did back then. Is I found the passion, and I want to just do heads.
Yeah.
And I spent that whole 2 years just heads after heads after heads.
Yes. Yeah. So
okay, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Now. So you're really focusing. You're drilling down, trying to decide what it is that you're going to work on. And it can be the most humble of subjects.
It could be a lemon artist.
Yeah, it could be just apples or something,
still life or
very
things.
simple still life.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be super complicated. And in fact, the simpler it is, one thing I've found, and it's really interesting in the market right now, when there's so many artists all competing on like Instagram and stuff like that, a lot of times the simplest objects or the simplest ideas are the ones that are memorable.
Yeah.
Because your mind is maybe flipping through 10, 15, 20, 100 images, and you can't process those more complex things as much.
And it's so fast every day, especially with COVID, it's even 10 times or 100 times more.
Yeah. So the more focused you can be, then I think, in terms of building some continuity.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things. Now, along with all of that, one thing, at least with traditional painting, and that's kind of where we're going with this, is more in the traditional painting arena. It's not enough just to practice. Practice is something where maybe you practice something and then next week you try something else, and the week after you try something else. And what you'll find through all of that is that's a lot of time wasted, because you don't have a lot of continuity from what you're studying, right? And you don't have a lot of consistency. And what happens is your mind is not able to build the synapses and the connections, because it takes time for the hardware to rearrange in your mind, the neuroplasticity to kind of solidify in those areas that you want to develop if you're bouncing around.
Yeah.
And so we have to kind of calm down, focus, really decide what it is, the pinnacle of what we want to learn.
Yeah.
And go after that. And then that practice needs to be, weekly practice. If not daily, it should be
somehow it's
weekly, right?
Consistent basis, not on and off.
Yeah. And so you go from just practice to you're doing a more intense type of practice at that point, but you're still not doing deliberate practice.
You're just counting the hours almost.
Well,
like you put the hours in, you're practicing, but now we're talking about the deliberate practice.
Okay. So when we go from just regular kind of practice, even consistent practice, now let's talk about deliberate practice. Deliberate practice has a lot to do with only in areas where there's a really established field of expertise. And so with deliberate practice, it has to be in connection, not necessarily just with yourself, but with a master or a couple teachers, at the most, right? Where you are working with them, if possible, one-on-one, or getting some feedback, or you're giving yourself self-feedback if you're able to be critical of your own work. You have to have that feedback in order to go through this mastery cycle. So what you do is you get the lesson, and the lesson, again, is from somebody that has achieved the expertise that you're looking for, and they're telling you need to do X.
Let's put it in perspective, like a real example. For example, I find a master. I was taking your landscape course on sentient, right? So I started with that, and then you told me we need to do value studies.
Right.
So I pick value studies as my topic or central focus.
Yes.
And now what do I do?
So, and then I tell you, okay, you need to do 3 value studies. Okay, we're not going to 5 value yet, depending on where you are at in your level, right?
At that point, I did do 3, just exactly what you said, 3 values.
Okay. 3 value studies. And maybe you did the assignment, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You said do a couple, and I did
a couple.
My wife and I had that discussion the other day. A couple means 2. So I did 2.
Okay.
No, to me, a couple means a couple more. But anyways, I did a couple.
Now, after those 2, did you achieve mastery?
And that's a lot of students tell me I'm done with the course. Just because you watch the video and maybe do those couple exercises doesn't mean you're done. So I might think I'm really good at it, but I did not achieve mastery.
Yeah. So for example, I'm not done with the 3 value studies, right?
You're still doing it.
Still doing it.
I see it in your studio all the time.
Right. Yeah. Little gray studies, 3 values. Usually, like I do them with oil paint, right?
Yeah, me too.
And you just do them, over and over again. And it's also a practice I can incorporate in my studio before going into a bigger painting. Just go through it and do a 3 value study of what I'm going to paint first.
Yeah.
So I kind of work it into that process,
Mhm.
right? Because what it helps me do is solve the, big areas of value and
Mhm.
kind of group them in those
You're
areas.
simplifying
Yeah.
things.
So that I can make a painting with stronger value
Yeah.
pattern. But at the beginning, when I was learning this, you have to do 100, 200,
So
300.
my 2
right?
weeks straight of value study is not even enough.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
And we have a great example, Norman, he's still doing it,
Yeah.
right? And you can see the improvement that he's,
Right.
come through, and he's still doing it. But that's the point here, right? It's just kind of
Yeah.
continue to.
So in fact, I've been working with a guy on value studies, just a single artist, for about 2 years now.
Mhm.
And we're still going through kind of value studies. And I mean, the improvement is just amazing, but there's still things where I say, make this adjustment here and here.
Mhm.
And that's where, the feedback becomes really important. So he's focused on a specific goal
Mhm.
and it's been recommended by somebody who knows what they're saying,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
And then you're doing the exercises.
Mhm. Over and over again.
Oh, and you're getting the feedback.
Now the key is feedback, because I can do it 1,000, 10,000 times,
Right.
but I keep doing it the wrong way.
Yeah.
Then that's where we might get down to the wrong path. We'll develop a bad habit.
Right. And so that's why we have, like the workshop sessions.
Yeah.
And also some individual critiques when
Mhm.
people ask for it. Is you need that. It's just like you go to the orthodontist, get your braces adjusted.
Oh, don't mention
Yeah.
that. I remember it's painful,
Yeah, it is painful.
but the result is good.
So what happens usually, when I teach a workshop, and I've seen over the years, or people come and bring me a group of work and say, okay, what do I need to work on and improve on? Sometimes I get the kind of attitude where there's more, I'll mention something and there's a defense where, well, I did this because of this reason. And certainly that could be a definitely a valid reason, but the intrinsic or what has actually occurred isn't working.
Yeah.
And this skill, because this skill needs to be strengthened.
Mhm.
And so, instead of trying to defend yourself with that feedback, it's important to be open and to say, okay, he's telling me to improve a specific area that's weak.
Mhm.
And so that's what a coach should be doing. Is a good coach should be telling you specifically, okay, in this group of work, I see like maybe your values are jumping all over the place. Something that I see very often is that the highlight in a tree, the light side of a tree mass is almost, in a novice painter, is always too high in value. And so that's where I go to this idea of the 3 value study, and that's to understand how certain masses need to hold together against other masses in order to read really well.
Yeah.
Right. And what you're doing is, that student or that novice is violating the rule of where in one given mass, that tree, the shadow side of it and the light side of it are off. They're too far apart.
Yeah.
And so it's actually that light value is confusing itself with the ground plane, right? Or the sky. And so that's why we go back and say, well, we need to go back again and work on these exercises, because when you see a landscape that shows a tree with this high contrast on it, you will diminish that contrast in order to keep the integrity of the 3 value study, right?
So a good practice is to really hear you say the whole thing, take it with you and go practice, rather than cut you off and say, oh, but I already, but I did this.
And also my goal as a teacher is to remind you again and again, and and pick it out when it happens. Yeah. Right.
And that's
but also
where it's valuable.
But also pick it out where it's working too.
Yeah. There's the good and the bad. Keep the good.
Yeah. Because usually in a given piece, what I find is, oh, here's where you did it, and here's where you didn't. And then we have a discussion on, well, why did you see it this way correctly? And on this part of the piece, you didn't see it correctly. What happened there?
Yeah, and that's why.
What was your decision process? Because what we need to do is somehow in the wiring in our brain, you're making a decision based on some sort of stimulus, and you need to change that decision. and you have to kind of correct that many times
Mhm.
until that's how you see it correctly.
And that's where you start to achieve mastery, is that consistency.
Yes.
You want to make the same decision
Because nature's
each time.
nature's gonna throw a curveball at you,
Yeah.
and you still need to be able to handle that curveball and put it back. That's why it's not just a one-off thing. It's because nature is full of curveballs,
Yeah.
right? Curveballs or knuckleballs or all kinds of different things that can kind of throw you off,
Yeah.
right? So that's kind of the essence of getting into this deliberate practice mode, right? Is to have it's in connection with somebody in an established area that knows their stuff, is a good coach,
Mhm.
and helps bring the student along. Okay, so now part of it too, you can do that self-evaluation. One of the ways that I do some self-evaluation, but I still get feedback from my peers on things that are really like a major curveball, right?
Yeah.
Like, why isn't this working? And somebody can look at it and say, well, have you thought of this? And that's one way maybe how they would solve it.
Mhm.
But the good thing is, it's good to get that kind of feedback, because you're going to solve it always kind of a similar way every time, right?
And that is a good point. Even someone at your level, you are still kind of humbling yourself to open for that feedback.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you never take that feedback as a, offense.
Right.
You are actually looking for a way out or better way to approach this, right?
Yeah.
So you're doing that cycle yourself.
Right. So if you look at like Michael Jordan, I watched The Last Dance. It's a great series of just about the Bulls, Chicago Bulls. And if you hate basketball,
good times.
Don't worry. But it's great to watch, because you can see kind of his drive, his desire to practice and never discounting it, no matter how good he got. But also that he needed Phil Jackson, the coach, to always be there to be the coach, right? And he even said, like, if Phil Jackson leaves, after they've won 6, I'm going to leave too. And that's what broke the band up. But anyway, it just shows, how important a coach can be in that sense. So, if we're looking at this as you look at your growth, there's really only a couple of these little master study kind of relationship things that you can work on at a given time. A lot of artists will try and say, well, I'm going to try and work on edges, color, the value studies and everything all at once, right?
It's like juggling with glass balls too. Like, if you drop one, it's ruined.
Yeah, and there's also what a coach does is says, okay, you might be missing this piece. Let's not worry about color right now. Let's really focus on value, and let's work on this ball right now.
Yeah.
Now, value can encompass other things like edges. It can encompass a texture and stuff, design and stuff like that.
A whole bunch of stuff, right?
But at least you're eliminating some things. But as much as you can eliminate, I think that's really important. Also for the coach to say, okay, this is where your skill level is. So this is the exercise that we're going to do. And, I found this also when helping my kids learn how to master something. If they are really frustrated with riding a bike, instead of learning how to both pedal and to balance, you get those bikes that don't have any pedals on them. The balance bike, right?
You focus on just one thing.
Just one thing at a time. And so a good coach will say, okay, this is too hard for you right now. Let's go back down to a simpler thing. Like I mentioned, 3 values. Let's go back to 3 values instead of going up to 5 or 9, Let's go back down to the range that you're comfortable with. Start there, and then we'll build up from there. And the thing is, you can work your entire life, and if you're missing some of those fundamentals, it doesn't matter how much painting you do, you're not gonna.
Those 3 are always off.
They're always missing. Yeah. Right. And so, one of the things that I was studying today, actually, and this is real, this is no joke or anything like that, is I'm looking at painting people in movement, just walking, like a pedestrian type person. What does that look like? How do you design that? And so I painted maybe 10 different people today. No, I didn't paint anything thing other than just little people, like
Yeah.
people.
And it's like those little
Yeah.
far away, simplified figures.
Yeah.
Not like
and
the
I
whole
try
render.
right. And I was just trying like, okay, so what if where should the soft edges be? Where should the hard edges be? And so I kind of putting myself in school, just like I would do anybody else. This is the only way you can kind of push to the frontier of things. And so, and in fact, last week, there's an artist that I've always loved since I was a kid. It's an artist named John Berkey. He's a science fiction artist. And things I love about his work is just this edge work, inventing forms. And, although I've looked at his work a lot over the years, I haven't done a whole lot of master copies of his work. And you really need to actually do some master copies, right? And in order to study his work. And so that's the other thing too, is that not only do you want to do the little exercises, you also want to do some master copies within the specific area that you're interested in, right?
So you pay extra attention after this exercise and say, I'm going to see how he grouped the values together and simplify it or something like that, along the same line, not all of a sudden jump into something totally off track.
Right. So, for example, a guy like Tim Lawson, who's very great at these compressed values and really works with, this game with playing with values, he's definitely gone in and looked at like Winslow Homer and other artists that just really design spaces around, big, large value pattern, right? And that's so critical to. And people say, well, you're just really good at it. And, he would say, no, I've looked at these guys and actually done the studies and the copies. And
so there's not really like talent alone. It's going to
no.
Like,
so, and that's the thing, right? Is that talent, we always say, oh, you're so talented and things like that. But really what comes down to it are a couple of factors. And one of the main ones is the deliberate practice. The other thing is also being, if you have a group, to, like all of you guys that are tuning in here, I think that shows that you have an interest in becoming better at what you're doing. So, that's a big part of it too, is tuning in to, the tribe, right?
Yeah.
And it takes that, you see, in art history that it's not just individual artists, as much as Michelangelo or Leonardo would say it's all just them. It's not. I mean, it was their rivalry, right? It was that thing that was created in the Renaissance. It had to do with the money that was flowing in there from the Medici family, being able to support these artists, to give them opportunities to study, bringing in antiquities for them to study. A lot of these things are important. There's that supportive network also that's part of it. That's one of the things.
And that's why we're building here too, right?
Sure.
We're trying to build this network for you guys to come and learn in the similar framework, like what we just talked about, this mastery framework. And if you guys are current students, if not, we offer free membership. Just go to our community. You'll see we have a lot of students there posting their work, and you guys, you, Alvin, and everybody actually jump in to give them that feedback. We're creating that loop, right? We give them comments, give them feedbacks, kind of correct you as you go. So I'm just shocked how little or how much certain people are taking advantage of it.
Oh,
you gotta just keep that up, right?
I'm most surprised how few actually take advantage of it compared to others. Others are really taking advantage.
We have some students there. Just every week, there's assignments showing up, and you can see them improve a ton. Yeah. But I think a level of that is kind of, people are shy, right? And then of course, sometimes you don't want to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
But we created a pretty positive environment where we are really helping each other to grow.
Yeah.
And I just want
to. Well, and here's the deal: like every artist, I've made every mistake you could possibly make in a painting or a drawing, and I know what it's like. It's not like even if you show it, I know how it can be. It can be, if you feel like you're putting yourself out there, but in order to improve, you have to get that feedback, right?
And today we're talking about achieving mastery, right?
Right.
It takes a lot to be a master. So if you want to be a master, this is part of the process. Like the harder it is, the more reward you get.
And maybe not all of you want to get to that mastery level. Some of you, I'm sure, really, really want it. We don't all have to necessarily be the Michael Jordan who just wants it so bad that he'll do anything and everything for it. But one thing I found that even somebody that has the commitment for a couple of years, like a real
Like me.
strong commitment, I mean, it's amazing what you can do, right?
Yeah, like I commit to it and say, if I only have an hour a month, I'm gonna make the hour count.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be like you, but I enjoy seeing some work that will make me happy.
Well, and enjoy seeing the improvement
Yeah,
too,
right?
Yeah. And so, I mean, along the way, obviously you don't want to forget to enjoy it.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, one thing that's great is feeling like you're actually progressing and moving forward. And there's a certain joy in that, even if the deliberate practice can be a little painful at times.
Yeah.
And it really is. Deliberate practice also, when we talk going from 5 values down to 3 values, those 3 values should represent something that is right on the edge of your ability, to where, you're doing something and maybe me or somebody else is critiquing it and say, yes, that's okay, that's working at some level, but try this and work on this thing, and to help you improve.
Yeah.
And it'll be a little painful because you'll be uncertain at first when you take kind of that next step. And that's where you are going into that deliberate practice mode when it's hard.
Yeah, and that's kind of how actually human is designed. I had a sports medicine degree. So as bodybuilder, or you're training your body to grow muscles, if you say, I am lifting 10 pounds weight, it's very easy, very comfortable. And you just think, I'm going to just do that. It's easy breathing.
Right.
You are not going to grow your muscles. But if you put on just a little bit, like 15 pounds, you do about 10 rounds and you are starting to get tired. That's where you want to be. It's easy enough, but it's pushing yourself right outside of the comfort zone.
You don't want to do 25 pounds and injure yourself.
But you don't want to get to 25 because you might pull a muscle.
Right.
But if you start to push yourself outside of the comfort zone and load yourself just a bit more and more, you will see your muscle is going to adapt. And same thing with our brain, with our mind, with our hand, with our crafts. If you push yourself out there, your brain will adapt. And as you do the deliberate practice, the feedback with the master, that whole cycle, you will see the improvement. And that's what I did back then is, I couldn't do a head. Well, I'm not going to go right in and say, I'm going to do the whole body. I just narrow it down and say, if I can today, I can get to this point.
Yeah, just
that's my 15-pound weight, right?
Right.
I didn't go for this. I went for this. And then once I was able to do this, I add another 2 pounds and just keep going from there.
Right.
So I think we have a lot of students here in the Zoom meeting room. So we can probably open up for some Q&A if
let's do that.
Any of you want to unmute yourself, ask questions. Let's make it more interactive.
Yeah. So let's see. Can you open it up right now?
Yeah. So
let's do it.
Yeah, they can unmute themselves. So feel free to ask questions.
Okay, if you want to go ahead and unmute.
Okay, I see someone unmuted, but then probably decided not to. Okay.
Well, I'll go ahead and
you keep going, and then if we hear any questions, we'll answer the questions as we go.
Right. Okay. So along with the deliberate practice that we talked about, I also talked about this supportive network that's important too, to have around your kind of around yourself, right?
Yeah.
It's like your jogging buddies or whatever. If you're going to run, you want to have a group that you run with, kind of motivate you, right? And so with that, what goes to show is you want to turn this into kind of a routine.
You keep talking.
Yeah. So one of the things you want to do with this idea of a routine is, if it's possible to do it around the same time every day, that's another thing that can be important part of what you do. For example, before I walk in my studio, I have a stationary bike, and it's easy for me to have motivation to go into the studio and paint, but it's harder for me to have motivation to stop along the way and ride the exercise bike for 30 minutes before I go into the studio. So every morning I get humbled in, the things that I ask my art students to do, I have to force myself to do as well. Is I have to get on that bike and ride for 30 minutes. And, one of the things that, scientifically proven is that, exercise will help cognitive, the way your brain fires, if you've exercised beforehand. So that'll help me in my art. That's something I remind myself,
That's
like
your
I'll paint better.
routine though. So everybody has certain things. For me, brushing teeth does the trick.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to me,
That kind of restarts your day, right?
yeah,
You
because you
mentioned
feel like, wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth and you start your day. So sometimes if I get stuck, I'll go brush my teeth.
Okay.
And then it just reset my brain. So every single
Like
one
a new
of you,
day.
yeah, should find a specific ritual or like a routine or something, and that will just reset you. And then you can do that, or even like what you do is kind of prep you. Like,
Yeah.
you got to find that routine, and that will really kind of help you achieve a lot of things, because you don't want to go into the studio with clouded judgment and then just getting exhausted, tired, or your mind is not there. Then yeah, you could put in the whole 8 hours, but
Yeah.
that 8 hours doesn't really count. Instead, sometimes you create a bigger problem for you to come back to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And one thing I've kind of even built into my kind of routine is that I work on painting really hard in the morning, and I'll have lunch, take a half-hour lunch. And then what I'll do after that sometimes, because you lunch, you're a little bit sleepy, I'll put on my like a timer, and just because I don't want to
Power
sleep
nap?
long.
Are you talking about power nap?
Yeah, just a 20-minute power nap. Because what I find is that it's like I have a new day.
Yeah.
Right. Because I usually do my best painting in the morning, and so I kind of want to have a second morning.
Yes. And actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because right before this, I did my power nap.
Okay.
So my brain is, nice and clear. You wake up.
Yeah.
It works for me, but it doesn't work for my wife. She wakes up like worse than ever.
Okay.
So again, you got to find certain things that will work for you.
Well,
don't just take.
I find I have to limit my time, or else.
Yeah. There's that. To me, 15 minutes is the sweet spot. You get into the deepest sleep right away.
Yeah, and then
and
come
you
out.
Wake up, you just get it right out of it, and it worked really well for me. So those are a couple things.
And I find, I read about Winston Churchill. He had no shame in taking a power nap during the day.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, if Winston Churchill could do it during World War II, I can do it as well. And I found it's actually made me more productive.
In fact, I grew up in Taiwan, right? So in Taiwan, I hated it when I was a kid, because they forced every kid all the way to high school. We are forced to take a nap in the middle of the day. After lunch, everybody just, lay down on your wooden desk. That's why I hate it. And it's really hot. There's no AC.
Yeah.
Wake up all sweaty. But when you wake up that whole afternoon, your learning is like brand new, like the morning.
Yeah.
So I think Japan does that too. So at least I know Taiwan, we did that. And that's,
so these kind of practical things I think are important to do that. But, just having this kind of practice. Now, when I'm doing deliberate practice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Here's
go
a
ahead.
question.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
How are you handling COVID and people not being in person? So I know that really to get a good image and send it, and then also to have it received well, there's a lot lost.
Yeah, I mean, that does make it to some degree tricky. However, I think, at least from my point of view, I've seen so many images and kind of know what the camera does to things, that even if you feel like it could be better represented, and I feel the same way too. Like when I see my images on Instagram or online, I just think, well, because the iPhone makes it too contrasty and things like that. I think one thing that holds true no matter what are just the relationships. For the most part, you can pick out, whether something's lighter or darker. The color is where it does get a little bit funky, to be honest with you. And sometimes images may be a little bit overly soft, when they should be a little bit sharper. But often, when in my comments, at least, I try and compensate, understanding that, okay, this is what the quality of the image is, and do that accordingly. But you're right, it's not quite like, seeing it in person, but we're trying, with what we have to work with right now, I think at least it's a lot better. Even the digital images are than when I was, I first helped the Academy of Art University do online courses back in 2005, and the cameras weren't as good.
That's bad.
Yeah, so that I don't know if that answers your question, or or helps at all. But
Well, it does. Thank you. I just
think-
always have a problem when I'm photographing
yeah,
something with my iPhone or even with my camera. Wherever the
Yeah.
paint's really fat, you get this
Yeah.
big glare.
Yeah.
yeah. One thing I try and do with that, unless you have like a perfect lighting scenario where you have two lights are crossing or hitting the painting at 45-degree angles and you have zero glare on it, you have to have a polarizing filter on your camera to do that too. And that's tedious, and a lot of people aren't doing it that way. And so if you can find like the shadows, like the shady side of your house in the morning or in the evening, and you can take the image there so that you don't have those hot spots, I think that helps a lot. Of course, the color may not be perfect in that scenario, but at least you don't have some glare or those hot spots where you just can't see the detail like you would like to. If you're fortunate to live like in the California coast where it's overcast almost 90% of the year, then it's perfect because, overcast light is great. But, if you're a dry place like in Utah, like we're at right now.
I'm in Western Colorado where it's
Western
dry.
Colorado.
Yeah.
Well, you just have to do it during those thunderstorms.
Or if you do studio lighting, just get those soft box so your light is diffused.
Yeah, if you get a soft box of the lighting where it has that soft filter over the top of
Comes
the
out
light,
like this with a little soft.
it's got like a little
diffuser.
umbrella looking thing to it. That
Yeah, I
can
know what
really
you're talking
help. Yeah, but it's hard if you have like one kind of spotlight or something on it. It's always, the iPhone is great, but it also has major problems with it, the way the photograph is taken, right?
Right.
But at least know that I think most of the artists, having seen that, so many images over the years and in various lighting scenarios and stuff, can just see what's going on with that digital image for the most part.
It's a good question.
Thank you.
I have a
Well,
question.
Yeah.
So you talk about in the business course how how you still produce A, B, and C paintings, like as far as like their quality.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know what you do, say with like the C work, or how do you tell if you're truly progressing or getting better at your craft when it's you're still producing A, B, and C work.
Yeah, that's a great question. Seawork happens for a variety of reasons. One, I'm tired or uninspired, maybe bored, or maybe I'm just throwing something wild out like this total experiment, right? Now, if a lot of times I'll put my foot through it, or just it'll end up getting tossed. At the end of every year, I'll throw 100 paintings away, maybe, and that doesn't mean I finish them all the way to the end. I try and catch sooner rather than later if this is going somewhere or not.
Okay.
And you get better at being able to tell so that you can cut your losses. I think often as artists, we hold on to things longer than we should.
Okay.
And maybe that's because you had that one dog painting that all of a sudden you were able to turn it around and make it amazing. But for the most part, it's better to cut your losses. And so a lot of that work I will toss. Occasionally, if it has some merit for some reason, it'll end up in a studio sale, and somebody maybe finds some value in it. Usually a student will want to buy it or something like that. But for the most part, a lot of those, I just don't want the C paintings out there. Now the B paintings end up, sometimes it's just a record of what I was thinking during that time, because most of the A paintings get sold. Almost all of them. And so I hold on to some of the better B paintings just so that I've got a record, like 1 or 2 or 3 a year at least.
Like
Yeah.
some of the things, it could be a location, like when you went to China or something.
Yeah.
You might want to keep the memory.
Right.
Or something.
And sometimes the B paintings too, when it comes to work that I like to show, like maybe on Instagram, mostly I'm showing, hopefully A paintings, right? Occasionally I'll throw a B out there and, then take it down after a while. But just because I'm curious to see what kind of reaction I get from it. But with some of those B paintings, a a lot of them, because of the subject, somebody that knows nothing about art will want to buy it. We're getting a little feedback here.
Yeah, so if you're not speaking, please mute your mic so we don't get the feedback.
Okay, I think we're in better shape now. So anyway, that's, a lot of those bee paintings actually are sometimes great for in a gallery situation, just not for like a major show, but just to show as a group of artwork. Because a lot of people, I can never pick the first painting that's going to sell or the one that's going to be loved or whatever. And sometimes I find like, hey, it was just an idea that really hit somebody. Like, I just love this because of what it reminds me.
Yeah.
Irrespective of how good it was executed. Does that help? Hopefully that.
It's Mark. I'm glad you were able to make it because they have an interview right after this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Mark, they have a podcast.
Oh, right. Okay, fantastic.
You made it.
Great to have you here.
Thanks.
Okay, any next question?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So my question is related. So I hear your practice for the ABC paintings, but I'm wondering if I'm making a painting and I can see what's wrong with it, like this sky's not working, the clouds don't have the right perspective or something. Does it make sense to just keep working on it and perhaps overwork it and just get kind of like the value of the practice, or just set it aside and try to solve that problem the next time?
Right,
Just
tune
be
that
like,
on.
yep, that didn't work. So kind of like that, keep working, but it's going to be overworked, or just, put it aside and move on.
That's an excellent question. So one of the things that I think, over the years that I've found valuable is, okay, do I have a clear idea? Say you're not sure how, well, this is the thing I ask myself. Do I have a clear idea of how to fix it? If I do not, then there's something in my skill set that's lacking in order to work on it. It's never just going to kind of fix itself, right? So this is where I go, say it's in areas of clouds, okay? I'll set that painting aside, and then I'll do two things. One is I'll get images of just clouds, and I'll start doing some studies of just clouds, maybe the similar type of cloud situation that I have in the painting. Say it's cumulonimbus clouds. Okay, well, let's get a series of 10 images, photos, or go outdoors if you have great clouds at that time, and do a series of 10 images just to kind of strengthen some ideas about clouds that you can pull into your painting. The other thing I would do is also look at some other artists that looks like they solved maybe the problem you are facing, and then do some master copies of their clouds to get maybe an idea of something to work in your painting. I think it's better to do that than try and work continually on that one piece, because you'll learn not only will you learn how to maybe solve what you have that issue in this painting, but also you'll develop a skill about how to paint clouds a lot
or
easier.
maybe when you start over, the next time you'll get it right because you already did a study.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll find, oh, well, let's if that painting really is worth going back to, you'll be compelled to go back to it. But if not, maybe you'll just start another one that maybe is a better idea because of that work that you've done. You've realized, okay, well, the reason why this is wrong is, the type of clouds that I chose here are really not that interesting. I like this kind of cloud better because it works more with, the painterly style that I'm working with, or whatever the reasons.
Lighting,
But you're not going to know that unless you do like a series. But one thing with the study of the series, say it's again clouds, you don't worry about like as much the composition. You're maybe more studying how they overlap, how they get further back in distance, maybe the bottoms of the clouds, how they relate to each other in value and in color and in temperature. Also learning how to make clouds go, how you want to snake through them in a painting. So there could be those kinds of things that you could learn from this series of paintings that you've done.
And another tip about study, this is from David Dibble, he talked about it a lot, is when you do this series of studies, you don't want to, for him, what worked for him is he his canvas, he will get a bigger piece and tape it. And because
Yeah.
of the tape, he knows this is not going to be a finished painting, because you don't want to go on and do 10 finished paintings.
Yeah.
It's studies. So you keep yourself on a corner here, there to remind yourself this is a study.
Yeah.
There's a specific purpose you're working on right now to study the clouds.
Or some people do, like Ellie Hart does, just a notebook and just with a paper. And then you have something really cheap and it's not going to be sellable. And so you can do multiple studies for
just keep going.
very affordable, just in a notebook with, gessoed paper. Or there's even papers now that accept oil. They're a little more expensive, but just depending on what your budget is.
Yeah, good question.
Great question. Okay, next question.
This is the time.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah.
I lose focus. I want to jump around still. How do you like, and then I'm hard on myself.
You're hard on yourself because you jump around, or because of maybe you get down on yourself and then maybe want to try something different?
Yes.
Is that kind of what?
Yes, the latter.
Okay, yeah. So how do you break through those kinds of moments, right? Well, I think that's where having the supportive network around you, maybe if you have another artist that you're working with and trying to work on the same things, you can help encourage each other to stay focused. I think that there's a social component to that's, I think, really important. If you can tap into that, whether it's an online community or somebody in person, I think there's something critical there to help keep the motivation and the focus. Tribalism can be very damaging in some ways, but it can also be super positive in other ways. And what I mean by tribalism is that if you're a community that's working towards a common goal, you end up pushing yourself further than you normally would, right? And kind of staying the course. And so that's why that component, I think, is important. Now, personally, if you don't have that sort of maybe live group, there are lots of groups so for instance, we have Sentient Academy Artist Share Group, also Strata Painting and Drawing from Life. A lot of people are posting on that, and that's kind of a way that people have helped themselves be accountable. The other thing is, just making sure you're getting some feedback from somebody that's maybe giving you encouragement, as well as, that critical, you need to adjust or fix this kind of feedback, right? Being accountable to somebody is also kind of important part of pushing through. To just try and will yourself to self-motivate yourself all when you're alone, it's a tougher task.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We have a question kind of based on that ending. As you're looking for people, I mean, you see so many people, you admire their work, and then you're looking for people who can give you that kind of feedback, and then also do that like one-on-one mentoring that you were talking about earlier. How do you approach people? I mean, every artist has their own practice. They're working hard to improve their own skills. How do you approach them in a way that you want their help, but aren't going to be draining to their personal practice?
Well, I think there's, I think of one student in particular that I've worked with that it's really great, the relationship we have, because he respects my time, and our critique sessions are about 10 minutes long. And that's, if instead of saying, hey, can you help me with my work? I get that request on Instagram quite a bit. But if somebody says, what is one thing that I could work on that would help improve my work? Just limiting it, saying, I know your time's busy. Can you take 5 minutes and do, if you can make it in these like shorter little bursts, I think you'll have a much better chance of reaching somebody than if you're asking for something, just some general, like a question. So I think small task kind of thing. And if that person doesn't respond, then you maybe try somebody else, obviously. But with that kind of same mindset, say, hey, I know you're super busy. I value your time. if you just have 2 minutes to give me, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, whatever you say, to give me that feedback. And then you can maybe start build that relationship from there.
Mhm. And also when you ask for feedback, the way I look at it is, you got almost like one shot to get their attention, right? So you don't want to just like vomit out with a whole bunch of the work and have them sort through it do that filtering yourself to find one work that's worth getting critiqued.
Yeah. Well, and
You know?
here's the thing too with that. If I see like random, like a style over here, a style over there, usually I think, well, this person is not seriously trying to get better, so I'm not going to waste my time giving feedback. But if you have like even 3 to 5 consistent sort of things and you say, I'm trying to work on X.
Like clouds. Let's use
clouds.
the example.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
I did 10 studies. I picked the 3 that I'm really struggling or something and say, I'm working through these clouds.
Yeah.
Can you give me some
Right.
opinion or specific points where I can work on?
Yeah.
Would that be a fair?
Yeah, exactly. And I guarantee you that if somebody, me or somebody else, sees you are actually hitting the pavement and working hard, I'm more likely to respond than somebody that threw up a couple of
Yeah, just kind of like, hey, look at my portfolio.
or I haven't painted for years and I just did this one thing. What do you think?
Yeah.
I'm less, I don't have time for that really. But if I know that somebody's, serious about it, then it's kind of worth investing more, taking that time to help somebody along the way, investing. Yeah.
And a lot of times, like we do these live workshops where we will take critiques too. So if you, put yourself out there to take these workshops to build that relationship, so you become like a student of this artist, then you will start a little bit more of a better relationship to get feedback rather than just kind of solicit your feedback over the internet. That might come off a little bit more not respecting the artist's time.
Right. So I think we have time for one more question, maybe 2 at the most.
I would like to ask.
Go ahead.
I have a okay. I have observed my Insta page and pages of masters on Insta, like your work. I've seen Todd Casey's work, and I've realized that I am working on various subjects. I like working in still life.
Yes.
I just recently got a feedback that there's no there's no focus on one particular subject. You're just doing different things, and I'm just confused whether I'm going on the right track or no.
Okay.
I like doing different things, but I don't know where I am.
Yeah. Well, I think if the comment was there's no focal point, what that relates to is understanding and controlling your values. And so that's the main thing that you want to be working on is basically the idea is controlling the values around the edges of your canvas and only having the contrast in, your focal area, whether it's up here, there's only 4 spots really that it can be. As you think of the rule of thirds. And so that's where your contrast is.
Asking about focus in like her work as like subjects, as in portraits, landscapes, like she's all over the place there. Is that right?
Oh, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, you're not talking about necessarily the focus in one given painting, just in general. So that's why I would say I would pick one right now and really hone in on, what it is. Say you were going to, heaven forbid, you were going to die next year. What would be the thing that would be the most important for you to study right now? Is it still life? Is it landscape or figure? And I'd say whatever one you choose there, that's the one you want to focus on for this next year.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah. And that's kind of Marcus here, right? We talk about the vision board in our business course. Same thing with your practice too. You got to have that vision and say, like, 1 year, right? This coming year, what do I want to accomplish? And set that as your vision for this year and really focus on that instead of, you don't really know where you're heading. If you don't know where you're heading, you will never get there because you don't know where you're heading. But if you are able to say, in a year, I want to be really good at, say, still life, then you
Yes.
know you're heading towards that still life mastery or whatever level you're getting to. So you just gotta
Okay.
pin that on the board and then just go towards it.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the more focused that we can be, the more we can excel in a certain area. And it's harder than ever today because there's so many wonderful avenues to go.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it really the only thing you're going to rise is not because you can do everything. It's you're going to be known for one thing anyway. Even artists that do paint figures, still lifes, and everything else.
It's like Sargent, he's good at everything.
But portraits,
yes,
right. He's still going to be remembered. There's still going to be a pinnacle right there, right? And so that's what I would recommend. You strengthen that thing that is kind of the most important to you, and most, that you wouldn't want to leave life without having done.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of it's tough to do. For example, I love working in 3-dimensional space. I would have loved to have been a figurative sculptor, but you know what? When it comes to that, or being outdoors and stuff like that, that's why just landscape, it's the type of life and lifestyle that I've wanted to have, or that I love to have. And so ultimately that was the choice I had to make, even though, I could have gone in a different direction, but you just have to eliminate those things, as painful as it can be.
Okay. Well, on the same note, I just want to leave something with you guys before we go. 2 things I learned this: laser focus and momentum. We talk about that in our business course a lot.
Yeah.
First, you got to have your laser focus.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you're gonna just, like we talk about the horse cart pulled by different horses going all different direction, right? You got to have that laser focus. And once you have your laser focus, you will start to create the momentum. And then once you have the laser focus and momentum, that's where you're getting wherever you want to go. So always remember, laser focus first. And once you have your laser focus, do whatever it takes to create that momentum towards that focus, and you'll get wherever you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hope you've gotten some things out of this. I'm sorry if we haven't gotten time for everybody's questions. We'll definitely do this again. I think this kind of interaction is really important, and really appreciate your questions. If there are other questions that you want to ask, go ahead in the comments or in the discussion board in Sentient Academy.
Yeah, go to the discussion board in Sentient Academy. And even today, I got the date pinned down, August 18th. We'll do another one, but this time will be with Elizabeth Robbins and Shanna Coons. Those 2 are great artists and teachers themselves. So we will continue some of this discussion, but then we're going to be talking more about, our teaching practices, which, you can ask similar questions. So if you want to tune in for another live session like that, first of all, just join Sentient to be the members. So we will send you the email, so you will get the link next time. But we'll see you on the 18th of August.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I look forward to seeing your progress.
Yep.
Thank you.
And share your work in the community so we can take a look and, give you a couple comments here and there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Thanks.
sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Night.
That
Thank
is a
you.
Good morning.